Mark Donaldson alongside Janusz Michallik, and Arsenal for the time being back on top of the table, but Manchester City still with those games in hand. So Janusz, simple question to begin with. What is the bigger story in this one? Is it Arsenal's ability to bounce back well following that defeat against Manchester City, or is it Chelsea's continuing ineptitude?
Well, I'd like to say both, but it's of course Arsenal. They're top of the table, and no matter what we think and what we've said as pundits or anybody else, obviously most of us see Manchester City as favorites. Arsenal are top of the league. They needed a bounce. This was a London derby against Chelsea team. Whatever we may think of them, and I think we'll dissect that in a second. You still have to win that game, and they've done it in a great fashion, especially in the first half. Took the foot off the table, just off the pedal, just a little bit in the second half. I suppose if Mikel Arteta has one thing to say is that clean sheet, because they have conceded so many goals at home. I think they're maybe second or third worst in the league. So uncharacteristic of Arsenal the way they're playing, but they are top of the league and they have their pride. They're fighting, and I think they'll fight until the end. As long as they keep winning the games, that will put pressure on Manchester City.
Would you agree that it was probably a good fixture for Arsenal? It wasn't a game that they were definitely expected to win and score loads of goals. It was a game that they enjoy playing against Chelsea in a London derby. So the focus was already there, but they still had to do something. They still had to get the result. They still had to perform. They did all of that.
Well, I mean, when you come into the game, I mean, two teams, they're coming into the game not in form, if you will, right? I mean, 4 winless for Arsenal. I think it was 6 in the Premier League for Chelsea. Obviously, that record is even worse as you dig deeper in all competitions for them. But yes, some changes. I think they were to be expected. I think the biggest one, of course, was Jakub Kiwior because of his inexperience, his first start in the game. Hasn't had too many looks. If you look at Kiwior, I remember the game, the 2-2 against Sporting. I mean, he didn't look good in that game. Actually, I think he was substituted in the 71st minute in that game. So that was a big call. I think bringing in, some of the other chances. Jorginho obviously understands Chelsea. Chelsea did that with Aubameyang, maybe not with the effect that they expected, I suppose, although I don't know what they were expecting from a player that hasn't played in such a long time. But Mikel Arteta rotated, and fair play to him. I think the players that came in were tremendous. I do want to mention Trossard, because I thought he was very, very good. Yeah. It was just a simple rotation. I think he's different to Martinelli, offers something different, and we saw that in the first half, and I think it was important. And maybe a little bit of luck by chance because of a rotation, but I think you saw Xhaka kind of on that left-hand side delivering 2 very good passes, if you will, to Martin Odegaard for the goals. Martinelli, as we all know, likes to go to the byline a little bit more, and Trossard is silky smooth in terms of playing between the lines, changing positions. Maybe playing the false 9 has helped him with that. But no matter what Arteta thought it was going to happen, the changes he made paid off.
Yeah, let's bring in James Olley, who's been reporting on the game for ESPN FC. James, at the Emirates, what was your biggest takeaway from what you saw?
That Chelsea are a shambles, an absolute shambles. And we probably already knew that, to be fair. But look, I mean, Arsenal didn't have to be very good to win here. I thought they were quite nervous at the start. You could tell there were 1 or 2 mistakes in their play. Obviously, they've made 3 changes to the starting lineup. 1 or 2 maybe just trying to find their feet a little bit. They haven't won in the last 4 games. We all know the narrative about where they are in the title race coming into this. But Chelsea just gave them every opportunity to play their way into a bit of form, into a bit of confidence, and it ended up being an absolute stroll for them. And honestly, I thought some of those Chelsea players weren't even trying in the first half. And I could see Frank Lampard just down in the dugout in front of the press box, and the sort of look of just raw, almost shock on his face of what he was watching, particularly at 3-0. You could see Thiago Silva arguing with Ben Chilwell after the second goal. We just saw, as the Arsenal players ran off to celebrate, if they weren't arguing, they weren't even talking to each other after the first goal and the third goal. Particularly the third goal, I think all 11 players just stood hands on hips, no one talking to anyone, and that is such a sign of a team of individuals, no collective spirit, no fight. Lampard's talked a lot about pride in the Chelsea shirt and really trying to lift them in that sense for the rest of the season. I didn't see any of that tonight. Second half, a little bit better, but again, Arsenal took their foot off the gas. Probably already starting to think about Newcastle and that massive game they've got on Sunday. I just thought Chelsea gave them every chance to just come and take the 3 points.
Yeah, Janusz, that's quite an accusation, and it's hard to argue against what James is saying, that some of the players looked like they weren't trying, because if there's one thing a footballer hates to be spoken about, is he didn't try, she didn't try, or whatever. But you couldn't argue against what James has just said, because in that first half, in the first half hour, Aubameyang had 4 touches of the ball. Joao Felix, who the manager said pre-game is someone that he doesn't know what his best position is, so he can't have him as a number 9. Yet he picks Aubameyang there. What's the biggest issue for Chelsea right now, Janusz?
Well, James is right. Now you almost have to go even further, right? Because it's a dumpster fire. It really is. Yeah. It's beyond embarrassing, because you can lose games, but you have to compete, and that's what wasn't there. And James has mentioned a couple of examples. If you just simply look at the goals, on the first one, Kovacic doesn't even step up, right? On the second from Odegaard, who was it that didn't step up? I think Sterling obviously saw him and let him go. Thiago Silva couldn't step up. On the third goal, Silva and Fofana are defending on their butts after Aspi gets played behind on a simple cross. So, I mean, you look at this and you just have a feeling that, Chelsea has mailed it in long time ago. They really have, and that's the worst of it, right? Because you can say all you want about Frank Lampard, right? Maybe he's not ready, maybe he's not good enough, but imagine him as a player, what he must be thinking, right? I mean, he's played at Chelsea. We all know the way he's played the game and the sort of leadership he provided. So looking at that, and I think the camera zoomed in on our feed, James. I'm not sure if James saw it, but Mark, I'm sure you have, right? I think it was after the second goal. I mean, he was so close to just having a go at these players. I mean, you could see that he had to stop himself to do or to say whatever he wanted to say, because as I've said, I mean, you just can't have that. I mean, we've said everything there's been to say about Chelsea, because this season has been terrible, but it's getting worse and worse. I mean, you've got to have a little bit of pride. In the London derby against Arsenal, it's not going to change the way you have your season, but as players, I mean, you being looked at by your supporters, by the manager, by the ownership, and this is just, I mean, it's hard really to explain how easily Arsenal has had it in the first half.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube, and for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app, and for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.